Inravio.com.
Hello again, everybody. This is Joe Larson, and you're watching the 5 Off 5 On Racing Show. Welcome. Another night of race talk. We got a lot to talk about. Normal stuff. We had some stuff, as I say, to talk about at the Martinsville Speedway with the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series and the Camping World Truck Series at Martinsville. Some Formula One we're going to talk about, and also NHRA is jumping into the spotlight here at 5 Off 5 On. But anyway, I wanted to start off with something that's near and dear to me, and that's social media. You know, I look on social media and I see many people post stuff, questions, you know, what happened to this, what's going on with that. And what makes me laugh about that, and I want to be positive, is that most of the questions that are being asked in social media, they could find out themselves if they just went and looked for it. So when you do that, and one of the things that caught my interest the last few days was the North-South Shootout, the John Blewett III Memorial, which will be held down at the Concord Speedway in North Carolina. And people were looking for an entry list. Well, understand this, and I want to educate people a little bit on entry list. It's not NASCAR. NASCAR puts out the entry list in numerical order, who's driving it, where they're from, who the crew chief is, who the owner is, and who is their primary sponsor. Regular tracks that are just having a regular show, whether it's a little show or a big show, don't do that because they don't know who's coming. You don't have to pre-register. You don't have to call a track and say, I'm coming. You don't have to do any of that until you get there. So they don't know who's coming up. And years ago in the NASCAR series, when they ran for national points all over the country, and back in 79, 80, I was a registered owner of a NASCAR modified. And I used to get the entry blanks, and I would say, I would see on it, an extra $600 for Richie Evans if he shows up, an extra $500 for Jerry Cook if he shows up, an extra $700 for last year's champion if they show up. And that was to entice those people to call and say, hey, I'm coming. And then they would advertise that. They would say, hey, come see Richie Evans, come see Jerry Cook, come see Charlie Jazambach. That's why they did it that way. But you got to understand, that's almost 40 years ago. And in 85, NASCAR needed to simplify this national points scoring system. Because back then, if it was a NASCAR track and you ran in that feature division, and you declared national points, you received national points. It was a paperwork nightmare for NASCAR, as you could understand. They had to go through all the scoring sheets because the tracks they'd race Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever day, and have to mail the results to headquarters. There was no internet that he could just send it immediately. And sometimes a team would be disqualified and it would change everything. And back then, they were allowed and utilized double points. That was, to entice certain drivers to come and compete at their racetrack. There's many a story about Jerry Cook and Richie Evans living in upstate New York, and one of them or the other would send an empty trailer or box truck that was emblazoned with their name and car number west. When the race was east, the other guy goes, why is he going west? We got to find out. Are they going to this track? Let's go there. Meantime, the middle of the night, they went east and they went to the place that they intended to go to. It was the games that were played back then. 1985, NASCAR Modified Tour was formulated, controlled, and they went to certain racetracks, got those points for that. Could they still race at other racetracks across the country? Absolutely. Those points did not count towards the national points. They counted for that track or that series even. Now there's so many Modified Tour type series, and I often wonder, you have maybe 30 in this one, 15 in that one, 25 in that one, and they're trying to take from each other. I really feel, and there's another one that's being developed and hoping to get some shows in 2018. I really wish that the powers to be, including the NASCAR people, including the people who own the Valente Modified Series, the Modified Racing Series, and every other tour type modified series, would just one day sit down, have a meeting, and you know what? There needs to be some give and take. And to have 60 race cars show up for an event and to take 34, 35, and now run like a B main, as the Dirt Series calls it, and allow these competitors compete. And what NASCAR needs to stop doing is these, for the modifieds, these Friday, Saturday, Sunday events, these Wednesday events, these Thursday events, and especially when it's a Wednesday in Tennessee, where these teams have to take off from work and they have to lose money to spend money that even if they win, they're not going to make back. One of the reasons the late Ted Christopher flew everywhere he raced, except in Connecticut, and even sometimes then from one track to another. I can remember him flying out of Stafford to get to Lime Rock, which is a place, when I asked for directions from Stafford to Lime Rock, I was told you can't get there from here. But that's why he flew, A, so he could work that morning or afternoon, and B, not have to get a hotel and the expenses for the hotel. That's the biggest cost in the NASCAR Modified Touring Series, is the cost to go to the events, the hotels, the fuel. Coming to Long Island, the two bridges you have to take, the tolls, the wear and tear coming through La Crosse Bronx or down through the Clearview Expressway with your haulers, and it's not like it is in other states where the roads are pristine and the roads are fine. And that becomes a problem. And they have to leave at 3 o'clock in the morning, especially the Connecticut people. The New Englanders come down, and then they get out of there at 10, 11 o'clock, or if they're in the top 5, even later for post-race tech. And the ferry's not running, so they have to drive around. It becomes a 24-hour day. One-day shows, and I think if the series, all the Modified Tour type race cars got together and requested that and tried to make that happen, I think you'd see bigger car counts and less series. Not trying to put any series out of business or throw them under the rug, but when you walk around the garages where there's multiple Modified Tour type race cars, like at the World Series at Thompson, and you say, wow, there's 20 of those guys, 16 of them used to race on the Modified Tour. 2 of them weren't born when the Modified Tour started. Oh, that other Modified Series, it's a bunch of young kids that can make it happen. However, they're running that series because it's one day in and out. And they should do that. And yeah, let's go to Bristol, but why can't we do Bristol on a Saturday afternoon? I leave Friday night late, get there, do what you got to do, practice, qualify, race, go home. Same thing with New Hampshire. And New Hampshire threw that little all-star race on a Friday because the modifieds had to be there Wednesday, practice and qualifying everything Thursday, off Friday, which I never understood, and race Saturday. It never made sense to me. So it's something that they should really look at, and I wish they would, because it would make it a lot better for everybody along the way. So anyway, entry list. Folks that are on social media looking for entry list, unless it's a NASCAR event, you're not going to see that, because you don't have to entry. You don't have to declare all your stuff and who's your crew chief, who's your car owner, who's your primary sponsor. For the most part, and almost without question, there's no TV, so nobody's looking for that information except for the announcer, who, in my experience, or the PR people at the racetrack, walk around with a piece of paper, a clipboard. All right, who's your car owner? And who's your crew chief? Major sponsor. They write it down. And off they go to the next one. And that's how it's done, you know? And this is where I reach out to some of the teams. I really feel when you're racing at that level, the modified tour, whether it's NASCAR's, whatever it may be, have a publicist. Have somebody that's in social media for each team saying, hey, we're headed to this place, or we're headed to that place. We just signed this sponsor. The crew chief for this event is going to be, you know, so-and-so. And I think that's one of the things that should be due. And, you know, like 22 fifth graders, you know, they had appearance money back then, back in the day. And I kind of talked about that. Certain people, you know, especially champions and top runners like Cook, Evans, Jazomback, they got extra money. There's none of that anymore. I do not see that. Yeah, in the NASCAR Modified Touring Series, you know, the last year's champion is guaranteed a certain amount of money for making a bona fide attempt to qualify, as is the rookie of the year from the previous year. If last year's champion or last year's rookie of the year aren't competing anymore, or aren't involved, or they've gone to the Xfinity Series, then they go to the second place. And I believe that's fair, because technically that is the defending rookie of the year, even though they don't have the honor. And there's a lot of money that's paid to these individuals in the course of a season. Think about it. I mean, it's not a lot when I say it's a lot, but it's relative. You know, if you're getting $600 to show up, and you show up at all 15 races, you know, at that point, you receive $9,000 for showing up from something you did the previous season. Something to think about. Anyway, before we break, I want to just talk about the NHRA was in Las Vegas this past weekend, and the winners at the Top Fuel was Terry McMillan. The funny car was Matt Hagan. The Pro Stocks went to Greg Anderson. Pro Stock Motorcycle, Eddie Crawler. The Pro Modified, Steve Jackson. And the top alcohol dragster was Joey Severance. So that's what went on in Vegas with the NHRA. Formula One was in Mexico City. Max van der Stappen from the Netherlands won that event, with Valtteri Bottas second. Kimi Räikkönen was third. Sebastian Vettel fourth. And Esteban Ocon rounding out the top five. The standings in the Formula One, they're done. Lewis Hamilton won the title, first in points, followed by Sebastian Vettel. Valtteri Bottas was third in the final points. Daniel Ricciardo was fourth. Kimi Räikkönen was fifth. And before we go to break, I just want to talk about something real briefly, that our NASCAR family lost another member. And some of you may know him, some of you may not. And it's former two-time NASCAR National Mechanic of the Year, Bob Robert Demling, passed away from cancer on Friday. Bob wrenched Long Island modified greats over the years, including Bob Park, Steve Park, Fred Harbach, and Chucky Stoyer. Bob also wrenched the modified of his godson, Dylan Stoyer, son of Chuck Stoyer, who is a former champion at Riverhead Raceway. Winner of this past year's Islip 300 at Riverhead Raceway. Bob saw success not only on pavement tracks, but he also as well was on dirt with Chuck Stoyer down in New Egypt, and following and starting Dylan Stoyer's career from bandoleros to dirt mods to asphalt mods. Again, Dylan racing at the New Egypt Speedway, where he cut his teeth in modifieds. Bob Demling was 51, a great guy, a lot of knowledge. I had the opportunity to sit in the grandstands with him at the Riverhead Raceway at the last event and just talk racing during the cautions and in between events. Bob Demling will be missed by many. Keep him in your prayers.
Hey, I was gonna say what's up for some reason. Hey, we're Set It Up, and you're watching the Inravio TV network.
Village Music Shop of Mastic, 1-800-HEY-DUDE, your full-service store with personalized attention, school band instrument rentals and sales, music instruction on all instruments for all styles and age groups, for guitars, drums, amplifiers, PA systems, and accessories. It's Village Music Shop, 1495 Montauk Highway in Mastic. Call 1-800-HEY-DUDE or go to villagemusicshop.com.
Hi there, this is Buddy from Less Than Jake, and you are listening to Inravio TV. You're probably watching it too.
Hey, welcome back. Welcome back. Anyway, it's good to see Jay Slice is back in the saddle here with baseball over. So he'll be around for a few months. It's good to see him back. And 22 figure eight. I know hockey's starting, so we got to start, balancing out the ranges and your work schedule. So it's all good. And Winnie, it's good to see you back after being stuck working last week. So my regulars are here. Anyway, one of the things I'm going to do in the off season of racing is do a little segment each week called "Where Are They Now?" So if there's somebody that you want us here at the 505 On Racing Show to discuss, just send me a little message through social media. Hey, let's talk about so-and-so, and we'll do the research. We'll look them up. If there's a story you want to share, we could do that, and we'll start doing that every Monday night to help us along, because as everybody knows, there's not a lot going on from mid-November to Speed Weeks with racing, so we're going to start doing it. Where are they now? And it's funny, when I started looking up some people, and for those who missed a couple of shows, at the request of Phil Kerrs, Executive Vice President, Whelen Engineering Motorsports, had asked that I do a book. He's been asking me for years, and I mean almost since him and I first met, when Whelen Engineering became the title sponsor of the modified. And it had to do with we went out to dinner, and a few of us, and we were talking, sharing stories. And the next day at the racetrack, Phil goes, you need to write that stuff down. And I was like, Phil, it's not what I do. No, Joe, you need to write down. This is stuff, because when they're gone, the stories are gone. And we talked about Ed Cox, who was the series director for NASCAR, and now he's doing other things at NASCAR. Is almost as a social coordinator, going to the tracks and the liaison. But he says, Ed's around a long time, been involved with racing for his lifetime, and he had a lot of good stories. He was although he didn't get credit for this because the credit went to NASCAR, he was the person who, at the end of the show, and it says, and thank you for their expertise, or the advisor, it was Ed Cox, and a lot of the stories that he shared with them went into the movie as well. And Phil Kerr says, Joe, when Ed's gone, the stories are gone, and when this guy's gone, that story's gone. And him and I had a friendly little banter back and forth about this, and I was like, Phil, it's not what I write. I write fictional stories, and this would be real. And no, you should do it. Jamie, he grabbed Jamie. Jamie, come here. Tell us about the old days. And Jamie'd go on the whole tear about, some of the stuff that went on. And Phil goes, see what I'm talking about? He goes, I hope Jamie lives another 50 years, but when he's gone, his stories are gone. So when we lost Ted Christopher, I got a message from Phil Kerr, and Phil Kerr's, how many more people are we going to lose before we lose the stories? So I agreed to start writing it. So in doing some of our research, because this is research, I have to look stuff up. It's not like the way I write. The way I write is just make stuff up as you go along. Yeah, you draw from real experience, but you're making it up. I got to be accurate here. I can't say, a guy won 87 races when he won like none. I got to know what they're talking about. So in doing that, I'm saying, whatever happened to that guy? Whatever happened to that girl? Well, how come they're not racing? How come they don't own cars anymore? So I decided what we're going to do in the winter months, and especially while Joe's licensed here until the spring, we're going to talk about where are they now? Each week I'm going to choose a different driver or car owner or somebody that has moved up through the ranks or passed on or just kind of faded away, and talk about what they're doing. And I'm going to try to engage them as well if I can find them, and maybe they could call in. If they're local enough, they could come in, or even through electronic stuff, we can make it appear that they're here. So we'll have some fun with that. Anyway, speaking of fun, sometimes when I read some of the stuff about NASCAR, I go like that. But there was one post, and I think Jay Slice mentioned it earlier in the chat room, and I saw a thing about NASCAR officials have discussed the possibilities of an all-electric series. And this is going to help reduce the cost for teams in the lower series where money has been an issue. And even in NASCAR's words, specifically in the Camping World Truck Series. I also saw earlier that the trucks are doing a lot of these one-day events. Come in, practice, qualify, race, go home. And why did they do that? Because the owners were saying, hey, we're running for purses that are similar to the Touring Series teams, which they're not. They get a lot more, but that's what they were saying. We can't afford to do this. And that's why a lot of the truck teams have backed down. That's why some of the truck teams that you see, the owners are Kyle Busch Motorsports, Joe Gibbs, Richard Childress with their trucks. It's their own private development team. And you see some of the ages on these teams. And just watching the race from Martinsville, I remember that the announcers were saying, it's something about the top 10. Half the drivers that were in the top 10 at that point were under 20. The other half was like over 35. Now, the truck series, when it came out, when it was the True Value series way back when, where they had the halfway stops for pitting, which I didn't understand, were for drivers who their cup careers were over. Couldn't get a cup ride, couldn't get the next level, which was Nationwide at the time, now Xfinity. So they made this truck division. And the truck division was full of a lot of these former cup racers. And it was almost like watching vintage drivers in up-to-date race vehicles. So I'm looking at this thing about electric race cars, a series, and I'm like, how is that gonna save the cost? Now, there's a lot of research that has to go into this and a lot of R&D that has to go in, so it's not gonna happen anytime soon. But, so you're gonna go to the 30 or so truck teams and say, okay, you're now an electric vehicle and we're gonna develop batteries that could go 200 laps or 150 laps, not. And we're gonna race that way. So when you pit, I guess you plug in, and and you get these electric generators that charge you back up. I don't understand it, and I don't want to see it. And I think the fans are thinking the same thing. And some of the fans who commented were like, but I like the loudness of a internal combustion engine with 3-inch exhaust and open pipes. I like that sound. I love it. What are these going to sound like? You pass a Prius on the freeway, there's almost no sound to it at all, these electric cars. And I see what NASCAR's trying to do. They're trying to say, hey, listen, we're environmentally conscious and we're trying to cut down the use of fuel, even though the fuel that's used in race cars and NASCAR is not the same fuel that you and I put into our street cars, which, back in President Nixon's day, when he went to Bill France Jr. and said, hey, listen, there's an energy crisis. You can't be racing 500 miles with 40 to 50 cars every week. You need to do something. And Bill France Jr. explained to President Nixon that it's not the same fuel. It's different. It's totally different. And we're not using fuel that's coming out of the tanks at these places that, at the refineries. It's a whole different fuel. So they agreed to keep President Nixon happy to reduce the race events by, I believe it was 10%. So the Daytona 500 was really 450 miles. The Bristol, the 500 lapper was 450. And so they just reduced it. And that lasted for one season, I guess, when Bill France was able to show the Federal Energy Commission that, dude, but we're not using fuel that's gonna hurt people. And so, and when I saw that, I had to laugh. I had to laugh when I saw that. It was like, where are they going with this? If NASCAR would spend more time trying to put on a better show than trying to make headlines, there'd be people in the seats, they wouldn't be losing sponsors, and they'd be sending 10 to 15 cars home per event because everybody'd be there to try to get in. There are good teams that had to fold because of the lack of sponsorship money, the lack of the good show. There are good drivers who are now gone back to either their weekly racetrack or to a touring series because they can't get into the top three series because of finances. And you know what? It shouldn't be the person with the biggest checkbook is racing. It should be the person with the best talent. And years ago, and I did some of the resume work for the NASCAR Modifieds, where I'd go to tracks up here in the Northeast and watch a driver to see if they were good enough to come on the touring series. And now it's done by a committee of somebody who hasn't driven a modified, committee of one, hasn't driven a modified in over 30 years. And I don't think they've gone to an event to watch a driver to see if they're eligible. They haven't watched some drivers take laps in a modified. And that's where again, it's becoming corporate again. It's let corporate handle this stuff. We can't trust the people in the trenches. We can't trust the people who built them, who raced them, who wrecked them, who put them back together. We can't trust them. And that's what's happening. And now a person wants to go race any touring series that's a modified other than the tour, the NASCAR Wheeler Modified Tour. They show up with the right equipment, the right car, and they pass tech, they're in. They don't have to jump through hoops to make it happen. They just show up and race. Yeah, if they go out there in their menace, they're gonna have a little chat with them, I'm sure. But nobody just wakes up one day and says, you know what? I got about 200,000 in the bank. Let me go buy a modified and go racing. They don't do that. They've practiced, they've worked on them, they've built them. And they go to their local racetrack and maybe get some practice laps, maybe run somebody's backup car, to fill the field, whatever. But nobody just wakes up and goes to the local parts supply and buys a fire suit and a helmet and orders a modified chassis and then goes and buys a couple of motors. It doesn't work that way. NASCAR makes it difficult. Anyway, we're going to take a break, and we come back. We got some breaking news in the Monster Cup Energy Series and about something I said was going to happen months ago when we come back.
Hi, I'm Remington.
I'm Emerson.
And I'm Sebastian.
We're Palais Royale, and you're watching Inravio TV.
There we go.
The world of advertising has changed. Radio, TV, and newspaper revenues have declined drastically. Why? Because businesses have realized that advertising return on investment isn't what it used to be. So what can we do about it? Well, that's easy. Advertise online. Own a local restaurant, real estate agency, or even a national retail chain? Whatever your business, Inravio can get your message out there, and we can do it at a fraction of the cost. Call today and see the difference for yourself. This isn't TV. This isn't radio. This is Inravio.com.
Hey, this is Chris Less Jake, and if Inravio.com spots you at an event wearing this bracelet, they will give you $100.
Village Music Shop of Master. 1-800-HEY-DUDE. Your full-service store with personalized attention, school band instrument rentals and sales, music instruction on all instruments for all styles and age groups, for guitars, drums, amplifiers, PA systems, and accessories. It's Village Music Shop. 1495 Montauk Highway in Mastic. Call 1-800-HEY-DUDE or go to villagemusicshop.com.
Hi, this is Mike Jarecki from My Race News, and you're watching the Inravio TV network.
Hey, welcome back. I saw 22 figure eight wrote that if every NASCAR race was like yesterday's, the stands would be full again. Absolutely, because that was short track racing at its best, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. But anyway, when Eric Almirola announced that he was going to Stewart Haas, I said to myself, Bubba Wallace is going to Richard Petty Motorsports. And everybody kind of like, yeah, okay. I spoke to Bubba Wallace in the off season. Bubba and I were sharing a cocktail down in Charlotte. And I said to Bubba, what's it look like for 2017? He goes, I don't know. We don't have enough to run a whole season, so we need to gather some sponsors. And there he was in the Xfinity Series running sixth in points, and I had to shut the team down. It was done. Didn't have any money. Can't keep going in the hole to go racing. So he sat out, he ran a truck race here, ran another truck race, and then Eric Almirola had his unfortunate situation where he broke his back, and Bubba jumped into the 43 car owned by Richard Petty Motorsports under the sponsorship of Smithfield Foods. And he did okay. Now, a lot of people say, it really wasn't that good. But think about this. Here's a kid, young man, who now has to jump in a race car he's never driven, doesn't know the crew, not friendly with the crew chief, and can't bring his own spotter. The spotter-driver relationship is serious. Now, I first met Bubba Wallace through my cousin Fred Kraft, who is now a spotter in the top series for Front Row Motorsports. And when Bubba ran the K&M Pro Series East, I got to sit with them, chat with them, and I can remember Bubba got wrecked by somebody, and I saw him walking down pit road, and I says, well, this isn't going to be nice. So I kind of walked next to him, put my arm around him, and I just walked him. I'm not going to try to stop him. And I was like, you really want to do this on TV? You know, don't you want to do this like later, you know? And he started to slow down, and boom. From that day forward, every time I saw him, we got to talk and whatnot. So Darrell Bubba Wallace, he made 4 starts this year for Richard Petty Motorsports, filling in, as I said, for the injured Eric Almirola. And Bubba has signed Richard Petty Motorsports to drive the 43 car owned by Richard Petty Motorsports full-time in 2018. Wallace, a graduate of NASCAR's Driver Diversity Program, is only the second African-American driver to win in one of NASCAR's top 3 national series. NASCAR Hall of Famer, the late Wendell Scott, was the first African-American in this top series, securing 1 victory in 1963. Richard Petty Motorsports has only 1 victory since Richard Petty's retirement. 4 victories since Richard Petty's retirement in 1992. Those 4 wins was Bobby Hamilton had 2, John Andretti 1, and Eric Almirola 1. This, in my opinion, is going to be the make or break for Richard Petty Motorsports. And why do I say that? Richard Petty is still iconic in NASCAR. Richard Petty is called the king because that's what he is to NASCAR. Richard Petty started his racing career in the top series back in 1959, I believe. And Richard Petty did things in the 60s that were unheard of. Corporate sponsorship, collectibles, die-casts, coloring books, lunch boxes. Richard Petty, through the SDP Corporation, put his name in every household in America. Racing now wasn't just a southern thing. Even though they raced up north more then than they do now, it was known as a southern thing. Richard Petty got out of the driver's seat after that race in Atlanta in 1992, which, by the way, happened to be another future Hall of Famer's first race, Jeff Gordon. And you look back, 1992, that's 25 years ago. There are people racing today in the top 3 series that never saw Richard Petty race other than on video or on old shows or old broadcasts of old races. So this is the make or break for Richard Petty Motorsports, in my opinion. Now, there's no secret that Richard Petty, I've been a fan of Richard Petty since the first time I watched a NASCAR national, what they call them, Grand National Car event on Wide World of Sports in the early, mid-60s. And why did I like Richard Petty? He was winning. He was the guy. I can remember the announcers. It was Richard Petty, Richard Petty, Richard Petty, Richard. So subliminally it became etched in my brain, Richard Petty's my guy. And then, with the STP and the commercials and the year Richard Petty won the Daytona 500 with STP on the car, and Mario Andretti run Indy with STP on the car. Man, not only did I like the 2 of those guys, but I'd buy STP oil and I didn't even have a car. I would grease my chain with STP on my bicycle with STP oil. I became a fan. Seeing Richard Petty race on Long Island at the quarter-mile bull ring known as ISA Speedway, like, wow, this is wow, this is Richard Petty. And he was probably in my lifetime the first superstar I ever saw live, in right there, flesh and blood. And like I said, I've been a Richard Petty fan forever. And I joke around, no matter who they put in Richard Petty's car, I'm going to be that guy's fan. I'm going to be that guy's fan. They could put one of my worst enemies in Richard Petty's car. I'm still going to be that I'm going to follow Richard Petty. But with Bubba Wallace coming in and running the Ford and the experience that he has, and I call it the young, I got to go get him. I'm going to go prove myself. And he has all winter to acclimate himself with his team and develop relationships. And if I was a behind-the-guy person at Richard Petty Motorsports, I would make sure my crew chief and the spotter, whoever that may be for 2018, and Bubba Wallace get together every once in a while, like a couple of times a week. Whether it's go out to dinner, go fishing, go take a vacation, and collectively become one. And that's going to make or break Richard Petty Motorsports in 2018. I'm not saying Darrell Wallace is going to be in the top 5 every week. No, but I will say this. You will see Darrell Wallace running up front often. And you will see Darrell Wallace Jr. when they go to the playoffs in 2018. I think he's going to make the first cut and the second cut. I see that happening. This bond that he has with racing and his feeling to do well. He's a well-spoken Southern gentleman who could drive a race car. And this is a deal that I thought and had hope would have came out a long time ago. And I wish him only the best. And I'm happy to see that Richard Petty has a bona fide driver. I'm not saying the people he had prior to that were not. Eric Almirola is not a bad race car driver. He took the Richard Petty deal as a stepping stone. Drivers before that went to Richard Petty as a stepping stone. The late Big Bob O'Rourke, who ran racing up here in the Northeast for years, once told me the lowest paid driver in NASCAR's top series is the driver who drives for Petty, because he doesn't pay him that much. But Richard Petty's old school. If we do well, you'll do well. And that's how it should be. It should be an incentive-based deal. And we talked about that on the show, an incentive-based deal. You know, not, all right, let's see, I'm going to sign you, I'm going to pay you $6 million, and you're wrecking every week. You're still getting your $6 million, or $10 million, or $5 million, over $1 million. Think about that. And there's Richard Petty's old school. It's a handshake. I'm sure legalities, there's contracts, but you shake his hand and say, we got a deal, you got a deal. I want to see that. I want to see Darrell Wallace do well. I want Darrell Wallace to prove to his detractors that he has what it takes to go racing. Not because I'm his friend, not because I know him, because he deserves the opportunity. And when I saw some of the headlines and some of the news reports that, you know, he's only the second African-American, blah, blah, you know what? I don't like when I see that. Darrell Wallace Jr., although came out of the NASCAR diversity program, he's a race car driver. No matter what you are, whether you're Italian, Spanish, Irish, a Southerner, a Northerner, a Canadian, a Mexican, you're a race car driver. Your nationality shouldn't make a difference. But you know what? People are jumping on that. And you know what? When he proves them that he has what it takes, you heard it here first. Just saying. Just saying. Anyway, I think we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about Martinsville and some of the stuff that went on there when we come back.
Hey guys, this is Jibs from Ocean's 8, Alaska, and you're watching Inravio TV Network.
Hey, I'm Raul Panther.
And I'm Commander B. Hawkins.
And I'm Mark Weller. We're some of the proto men. If we see you without this bracelet, you're punching the. But if you have this bracelet from Inravio.com, you can win $100.
Put one of these on, or else.
What's up, guys? This is Assuming We Survive, and you're watching Inravio TV Network.
Hey, welcome back. Martinsville, one of my favorite tracks in the top series. I can't begin to tell me how many events I've gone there, worked there, and even drove they call it caution car, the pace car there a couple of times as well. But anyway, the Camping World Truck Series was in Martinsville this past weekend. And Noah Gregson, first ever Camping World Truck Series win. Noah Gregson, he did a nice job. Matt Craftston was second. Johnny Sauter, third. Harrison Burton, fourth. Todd Gilliland, fifth. Stuart Friesen, sixth. Kaz Grella, seventh. Christopher Bell, eighth. Ben Rhodes, ninth. And rounding out the top 10, we had Austin Cindric. In the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series, Kyle Busch took down a win there with a last lap, a little push. Martin Truex Jr. second, Clint Boyer third, Brad Keselowski fourth, Kevin Harvick fifth, Trevor Baynes sixth, Denny Hamlin seventh, Ryan Blaney was eighth, Matt Kenseth ninth, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. rounding out the top 10. The standings with two more events to go in this segment of the playoffs. Martin Truex is sitting on top, followed by Kyle Busch, Brad Keselowski third, Kevin Harvick fourth, Jimmy Johnson is fifth, Ryan Blaney sixth, Denny Hamlin seventh, and Chase Elliott, the last guy in that spot in the playoff standings. 4 drivers will be eliminated after Texas, which is next, and Phoenix Raceway in Arizona. So 4 guys will be bummed out. So if one of the bottom guys, maybe Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, or Jimmy Johnson win, they're locked in, as in one of the drivers in the top 4. They win and you're in type of thing. And speaking of Chase Elliott looked like he was headed to victory at the Martinsville Speedway in Virginia until Denny Hamlin made contact with Elliott going into turn 3. Elliott spun, making contact with the wall, and his day was all but over. Hamlin led and took the lead until the final lap when Kyle Busch moved Hamlin out of the lead for the victory. During the cool-down lap, that's the lap when the race is over. I don't know why they call it a cool-down lap, but you do a lap to get to pit road. During the cool-down lap, Elliott ran Hamlin into the wall on the backstretch. A heated discussion ensued on pit road after, with Hamlin exiting his wrecked race car with Chase Elliott on his bumper on pit road. Elliott exited his race car, and they were chest to chest. And all you could see Chase Elliott saying and mouthing is, "You wrecked me. You wrecked." He must have said it 5 times. NASCAR officials came by, separated everybody, no punches were thrown. But I am sure NASCAR chatted with the both of them in the post-race activities. They probably took a walk to the hauler and had a little chat. And will penalties be assessed at tomorrow's competition meeting? I'm going to say no. And people are going to say, really? Well, Hamlin punted him, sent him into the fence, and this happened. It was a bump and grind race, and I love these half-mile racetracks. I love them, And when you see this kind of racing, this is racing to me. This cookie cutter stuff, there's a parade with no music, everybody just drives around, But I don't believe there's going to be any penalties. If what should have or could have been done in that event is the tower could have put Hamlin to the tail end for aggressive driving. Denny Hamlin used Chase Elliott's bumper going into 3 as his brake pedal. He tried to hit him square. It didn't happen. You're going into a corner. and the banking there is little to none. So when he got him sideways, he didn't back off. He just did his business. A lot of people are flipping out. A lot of people. Social media was hopping. And what cracked me up was seeing people on social media saying this stuff, where I know from my local racetrack, and when watching some of these people, I even said to them, but some of you wouldn't have done the same thing for the win. And if you say, oh, you wouldn't have done that, you need to go to your local church and go to confession because you're lying. And, you know, one guy, you know, writes back to me that he's never done it his whole life. I know he did, and I have nothing but time on my hands. I'm going to find the video that he did. I'm going to post it because that's how I am. Jay Slice, you know me a long time. I'm going to find that video, and I'm going to post it. Because this guy said, he would never do that, you know, that's not racing. Yeah, okay. Many a black flag was waved to this driver for stuff he did on my local racetrack when I held the black flag. Where the late Mike Fields used to say, this official, he speaks softly and he carries a black stick and there's a black flag attached to it. But it was racing, like 22 Figure 8 said earlier. These short track races are racing. I would love to see this series only have a couple of mile and a halfers. I would love to see them go to half mile or less. Half mile, 3/4. Yeah, run Daytona, run Talladega, run Michigan. But take away these cookie cutter tracks and do it. And, you know, and Slice, I said the same thing. His nose never went down. Now, those who are involved racing know when you just lift off the gas pedal, your nose goes down. His nose stayed up. He was still on the gas pedal. But anyway, that's just how it was. It's just how it was. It would be interesting to see, but I don't believe NASCAR is going to do anything. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to wrap up. We're not going to take a break. We're going to go right through. I'm getting, that for Rome. You know, I didn't state in my script. But anyway, some things I want to talk about. Before I go to my closing stuff I want to do, there's a gentleman I need to thank. And Anthony, I got to thank you. When Anthony came on board as the producer in the control room, I was like, oh man, another new guy, you know, because I'm not good with change. So then I recognized him from the racetrack. I said, all right, the guy has a little bit of racing knowledge. And whatever I've asked him to do, he's done. Not, well, can you get me an image of Richard Petty? Sure. Past guys I were like, who's Richard Petty? And I'm like, and you're producing my show. But you teach them, you go and you move on. But Anthony has an opportunity to move on to a local news station to fulfill his dream. And you know what? That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. Hey, if you know Speed Sport or ESPN or NBC Sport Network came to me and says, you want to come on board? Yo, Ultimate Media, it's been a pleasure. And that's what I got to say to Anthony. It's been a pleasure. It really has been. So when you're watching your local news, somewhere behind the scenes is my guy. Wish you well. Anyway, another new thing we're going to start doing is, as we close up, we're going to tell you what's going on in the future shows. So coming up, I believe what we have next week is Jeff Otto, INEX Legends car driver. He's raced here on Long Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Jersey. He will be live in the studio talking about his career, where he's been and where he's going. We also will have the president of Camo Motorsports, Glenn Sullivan. Those of you who are old enough to remember, he was a competitor at Freeport, Islip, funny guy. He was going to come tonight, but with the passing of his longtime friend, Robert Demling, who was buried today, he had to cancel on us, but he will be here the week after Jeff Otto. And also, we've locked in a guest for the Monday after the Turkey Derby at the Wall Township Speedway, and that person is Dave Sapienza, NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour competitor, who is one of those guys that he's one of the men to beat every week. So we're looking forward. A lot of new things coming on, and next week we'll introduce our new producer and control room person who's been here for quite some time now behind the scenes. So we're going to welcome him next week when the controls are all his. I got a lot of tissues and paper towels because the sweat's going to be dripping off his head, but we're going to have a fun time with it. We're going to have a fun time. It's all about fun. And 20 figure, yes, he is. He ran in the Bush North as well, back when it was the Bush North, which is now the K&M Pro Series East. So we have some good things planned for the technically off season of the weekly racing series. We still have some stuff to talk about. We got Texas, we got Phoenix, we have Homestead, we have the playoff picture, we have the champions, and then the banquet season comes. We'll talk about some of those things. And we're going to have a real good time in the off season. And again, our new thing with, where are they now? And I know I'm going to be enlisting the help of Marty Himes, because all I got to do is ask him a name, and he'll probably bring me the guys. The guy probably is a drawer of paraphernalia. So we're going to have some fun with that in the off season. And that's why we do this. We take everybody out of their Monday night, and Monday night, we don't watch football anymore because, well, I'm not even going to get into that politic. But Monday night, I'm here. I'm here every Monday night, except when I'm not. And but we have fun doing this. And this is why we do this. We do this for fun. We do this for fun. And, we got the holidays coming up. There's already Christmas music. Well, let me rephrase that. There's already holiday music on the radio. Lifetime is showing holiday movies. And it's like dogs are barking in the background, but it's all good. It's all good. See, it's all about having a good time. And when I tell people, when they come on the show, I've been asked for a script. I've asked for questions up front, and I said, listen, when you're sitting at the local adult brewery or you're sitting at your kitchen table, that's what it's like. We talk racing. And that's what we do. And I'm not an expert on racing. I have my own opinions on it, but I'll never say I was an expert. And I've been corrected many a time here, not as often as I was when WJ, the late WJ, my good buddy, was on. But we've always had that little thing with everybody. And me and 22 Figure 8, we traded some paint years ago, and he still talks to me, still watches my show, so that's always good. And Jay Slice, one of my crew chiefs for a couple of my cars, and we became family. It's all good. And Tracy and Winnie, regulars. If they're not on the show, they're stuck working somewhere or doing some other things. So, and VMC Marketing, I didn't see him in the chat room, so I want to thank him for coming on. So, anyway, tomorrow, Halloween. When you're driving around, be careful. There's going to be a lot of kids walking around, trick-or-treating, so to speak. So be careful. And wherever your racing endeavors will bring you this week, please be careful. Please be safe. Give somebody a hug. Tell them you love them. God bless you all, and we will see you all next week. Good night, everybody.